This year's Super Sebring event promises to be the most exciting in many years. With a new class of top-level prototypes at both of the endurance races, robust GT fields, and high levels of manufacturer engagement across all strata, the quality of competition should be exceptional. But just what is, some of you may ask, with rolling eyes and gnashing elbows, the appeal of this particular race weekend? What will I do? What will I see? What has changed from last year? How does one get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? Where should I go to watch the race? What should I bring with me? Why do the voices of the ancients grow louder with each passing femtosecond? This 30-ish minute guide, it was originally intended to be 10, aims to provide you, dear viewer, with the essential information for surviving and perhaps even enjoying the 2023 12 Hours of Sebring as a spectator extraordinaire. I will keep the history section brief, but it is worth having some context about the area upon which the track is built and how the race turned into the event it is today. Sebring International Raceway is built on the infrastructure of Hendricks Army Airfield, the first U.S.-located combat crew training school of the Army Air Forces during the Second World War, focused on training personnel to operate the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and consolidated B-24 Liberator heavy bombers. During the course of the war, over 10,000 individuals learned to pilot, engineer, and various other button-pushing activities necessary to the operation of a military aircraft at Hendricks Field, and the base acquired a reputation for producing high-quality, professional aviators. Deactivated following the end of the war, it was returned to the city of Sebring in 1946, where it fell into disuse until 1950, when Russo-American engineer Alec Ullman organized an endurance race inspired by the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Although the first running of the race was only 6 hours long and took place on New Year's Eve instead of the now traditional mid-March date, Fritz Koster and Ralph Deschamps drove a Crossley hotshot to victory, setting the stage for the creation of the 12 Hours in 1952. In 1953, the second running was the opening round of the World Sports Car Championship, the equivalent of the modern World Endurance Championship. The race quickly gained a reputation for being a brutal test of a car's reliability and build quality. The Florida heat and humidity, combined with the bumps of the settling concrete runway slabs, made once round the clock a tall order, which it remains to this day. The 12 Hours also acquired a reputation in the 1960s and 1970s for being something of an alternative venue for spring breakers that chose to eschew the overcrowded beaches. For a time it earned the moniker the Woodstock of Racing, for the freewheeling attitudes of the spectators and their occasional clashes with local authorities, called in to try and exert some control. While the modern event no longer sees anything on quite that level, there are certainly plenty of characters that enjoy the race every year, and from time to time an old couch or two does find itself mysteriously set alight in celebration of the end of the race. Well removed from any of the interstate highways that run along the perimeters of the state, or across through Orlando, the drive to Sebring takes one through the heart of Old Florida, pine hammocks and palm scrub, arrow straight roads flanked by huge tracts of agricultural land, and acres upon acres of orange groves. Spectators arriving from Tampa, Orlando, or any destinations north and west of Sebring will come in through the town, past most of the opportunities for buying any last-minute race weekend essentials: beer, ice, red meat, and plastic lawn flamencos. To those coming from the eastern parts of the state or beyond, there is the unique opportunity for a slight course deviation to visit Yeehaw Junction, bustling metropolis of Lower Osceola County and site of the remains of the Desert Inn, which existed on the site from the 1880s to 2018, before its inadvertent destruction by a tractor trailer in 2019. Upon arrival at the track, head through the gates, thanking those working the check-in booths. All of these good folks are volunteers, including the race marshals, and walk or drive down Midway Drive. We'll discuss the layout and dynamics of the track itself in greater detail shortly, but first a brief overview of the various areas of the track open to spectators and the attractions and points of interest contained therein. This is a roughly north-south oriented map view of Sebring International Raceway. Entry occurs for spectators at this point, near the westernmost point of the track. The will call building for tickets or event registration is here, and if you opted not to pay for infield parking or it was sold out, free parking is available in these lovely areas just outside the gate. Past the entry gates is Midway Drive, originally one of the runways of the airbase. To the immediate south of Midway Drive, upon entering, are the car corrals, reserved for vehicle owners of their sponsored manufacturer and who paid for the special ticket. While they do offer catering on the day of the main races and a few other amenities, my experience with the Porsche plots over the past few years has been one of diminishing quality. For instance, in 2014, not only were several catering options offered, including barbecue being made on site, but beer and wine were provided in addition to the experience-related amenities such as hot pit visits, parade laps, etc. While by 2019, there had been a marked decline in the food and bev quality, and the other experiences, while still offered, were fewer in both frequency and duration. Just anecdotal experience, and the parking location is quite good, but take it for what it's worth. On the north side of Midway Drive, opposite the car corrals, are the manufacturer displays, where you can exchange your contact information and some small talk with brand representatives from various auto manufacturers in exchange for a free t-shirt or various other accessories, hats, lanyards, that sort of thing, depending on the manufacturer. At Petit Le Mans last year, Cadillac had by far the nicest shirts, although the Ford and Corvette ones were decent as well. Ford also had a static display model of the late 2010s GT, which still ranks as one of my favorite modern car designs for its sheer visual interest factor. Beyond the corrals and over the footbridge that straddles the beginning of the start-finish straight is the Gallery of Legends, which for Super Sebring weekend usually has a few previous race-winning cars and or vehicles of other historical note. It is also one of the few air-conditioned locations accessible to all racegoers around the track, which may be of considerable value depending on the weather on race weekend. Of greater interest, though, are the paddocks for the IMSA and WEC races, which are open to all attendees for the entire race weekend and afford an opportunity to see and interact with the drivers, race teams, and cars up close. This is also where the drivers' autograph sessions will occur on Friday morning at 9:30 for the WEC race and 10:45 for the IMSA race. Moving further along Midway Drive, to the north side, just past the manufacturer displays, will be a variety of vendors selling food, souvenirs, apparel, and so on. There is also the stalwart Sebring Beer Barn, which, unless things have changed in the past few months, should still be sponsored by Yuengling and sells beers by the each and by the case at very reasonable prices, especially for a sporting venue. Further north, on the other side of Big Bend, we find Green Park, the main party area for the racetrack and an excellent spot for people watching and really taking in the atmosphere of the race. One of the more unusual fan-driven facets of the event also shows up most commonly in Green Park. Fan-run, donation-only pop-up bars integrated into some campsites, allowing one to journey throughout the spectator sections of the track without fear of an empty drinking hand. Some have been in the same location and consistently compelling enough to merit their own Google Maps locations within the track, such as Beer Town USA at Turn 10. For enjoying the highest quality and quantity of wheel-to-wheel or door-handle-to-door-handle action, the key areas are typically the Turn 3 to 5 S's, especially the tricky exit of Turn 5, where drivers try to get on the power as quickly as possible to maximize their speed through Gurney Bend down to the hairpin. Turn 7 itself, the hairpin, requiring absolute precision in braking and providing excellent opportunities for overtaking, but for every chance at perfection, there is an equal opportunity for spectacular mistakes to be made and entertainment value to be gained. Turns 15 through 16. Although visibility is more limited in this area, the S's provide similar opportunities to turns 3 through 5, but at significantly higher speed, as drivers again try to maximize their speed in preparation for the long run down the Ullman Straight to Sunset Bend. Turn 17. Arguably the track's most iconic turn, and one of the most challenging in motorsport, Turn 17's largely featureless lines rob a driver of their normal frames of reference, causing this turn to be taken almost entirely by feel and muscle memory. Some say that it's all but impossible to take the same line through 17 lap after lap, and the bumps have acquired a fearsome reputation for taking their toll on the unwary. Turn 5 provides a great opportunity for getting those lovely, smooth, low shutter speed shots, as the cars are probably at their lowest speed during their lap, and the television camera tower is on the other side of the track. One of my personal favorites. Turn 7 is also a strong option for those type of shots, as well as capturing cherry red breaks during the evening and night stints as the cars slow from 180 miles an hour plus to make it around the tight hairpin without overshooting to negotiate the old hairpin turn. The car corral area looking across to Turn 17 is also a good spot, especially earlier in the week when the track is less busy, for taking shots of cars as they negotiate the bump. Track sessions earlier in the week and earlier each morning will also be running on a track that is less grippy, so there's always the potential for some slideways action or encounters with the tire barriers. And finally, this small area, just over the footbridge towards the Gallery of Legends, facilitating some lovely sunset shots and general medium-speed shots, as well as capturing the multi-class overtakes that frequently occur after prototypes and GTs exit turn 17 at vastly different speeds and acceleration profiles, assuming one has a solid telephoto lens or sufficient resolution to do some serious cropping in post-production. Although largely the same opportunities await the videographer as the photographer, there are some noteworthy differences. The last area mentioned, for instance, provides comparatively little opportunity for any sort of panning shots or wide-angle views, owing to the very specific viewing angle. The oncoming shot from turn 2 to turn 3 is also more compelling as a videographer. While still not a bad opportunity for still shots, it is more limited in the types of shots it affords versus the grassy knolls at turn 5 or turn 7, especially if anybody's racing a drop-top Lincoln Continental. For those looking to emphasize the sheer speed of the racers, the outside of Big Bend, turn 6, and the later parts of the Ullman Straight are ideal. Big Bend is much easier access for spectators and affords better visibility, but the speeds are decidedly lower. The track, in its modern guise, is 3.74 miles, making it one of the longest road courses in the United States, featuring 17 corners and several long straights that largely follow the course of the old runways at Hendricks Field. The final Ullman Straight and the start-finish straight are built on the old runways, and the settling of the concrete paving slabs tests a vehicle's construction to its limits, giving rise in recent years to the race-adopted hashtag #RespectTheBumps. Let's take a short-ish drive around Sebring in, well, what can only be described as one of the finest cars to never race at Sebring, and take a look at some of the features of the track, as well as some extremely rambling commentary. Have fun. All right, and here we are at the Sebring International Raceway in what, as I previously said, can only be described as one of the finest of automobiles never to race at this lovely track. It's definitely not said with any sarcasm. So, as we come out of the pits into turn 1, this is broadly considered in a recent informal survey published by either IMSA or Sportscar 365 the hardest turn of any track on the IMSA calendar. But our supreme Reliant Robin has taken us through there in an absolute symphony of beige and probably overly enthusiastic engine note synthesization. Anyway, here we go into turn 2 and 3 and 4. This is usually where people get caught out as they come around at much higher speed and get on the power a little too early, dip their rear wheel off the grass, and head straight into the wall on the left side of the track. But as we come out to Gurney, or Big Bend, this is a wonderful, wonderful place to be really going for some high-speed passing opportunities. If I was driving anything more interesting than this. The only advantage here is that we don't have to brake until very late, because there's just no speed carried through. Anyway, this is typically a first gear corner, or maybe a low second gear, depending on what you're driving. That was the hairpin. Lovely turn. Again, excellent for photographers. So, that's sort of through Fangio, and again, what can only be described as a symphony of beige. One of the most interesting things about this car, actually, based on the way it was coded, is it does appear that the person is driving, well, either they've really peeved some sort of medieval ruler who decided that they'd look better as a torso, or indeed somebody has coded the seat wrong, and the seat is in fact somewhat below the what would be the normal floor pan of the automobile. Anyway, here we go into, I think this is 13. Yeah, it's like 13. Again, wonderful track, lots of fun in a real car, but this does give us a slightly smoother way to tour the track. This seems like 14. And I wish they put markers up here to tell you which corner number it is, because I got, kind of distracted. But yeah, this is 15 Bishop. No, 14's Bishop. Anyway, again, normally a very high speed, nice set of S's, good overtaking opportunities, particularly for overtaking slower cars, so you can really punch this apex and hit like right about here, and get on the power to drive down one of the old runways to turn 17 and face the bumps. And actually, they've done a wonderful job of coating some of the bumps into the Assetto Corsa track here, and just gives you a little bit of feedback that you can play with. And oh boy, I'm gonna get Reliant Robin here, aren't I? Anyway, slowing. Okay, actually, it's better than I expected. Let's see if we can get a bit of a Clarkson going on here. Through 17, there we go. The physics engine has very interesting opinions about just what the Reliant Robin is capable of. I think any ordinary fiberglass automobile would have disintegrated into lots of tiny glass shards had that happened in reality. Not to mention, head probably would have burst from being subjected to quite so many lateral G's, but there we are. Alright, let's do one more lap so we can take a better look at the start-finish straight and a couple of the other turns. Wish there was a way to change the car you were driving mid-lap so we could actually do something interesting, but I'd probably also embarrass myself in anything more competent than this. So you do want to stay all the way to the right as you come down the start-finish straight, and then bear left and get out and onto the power. But as with turn 4/5, you want to be careful of that overhang there. It's very easy to go off and find yourself caught out, getting on the power again and into the tire barriers. Kind of like I did there, except not really at all. And away we go again. Alright, down here into turn 5, and I'm being overzealous, is the message that Reliant is sending. I am definitely not going full send. Not that you can really send a Reliant Robin with 50 odd horsepower, but there we are. Oh, hey, we've hit the British motorway speed limit, which is exciting. I can't imagine trying to actually drive one of these things at any speed approaching efficient travel speeds. Because, God forbid that would happen. Okay. Anyway, yes, again, here's turn 7. Typically, the idea is to stay wide until the very last minute and cut in. Of course, your mileage may differ. Anyway, out of turn 8 as we come into a increasingly shadowed turn 9. It's a wonderful time, golden hour as it is for the photographers, and into turn 10, named for Mr. Briggs Cunningham, both an excellent racer, engineer, and sort of sailboats. If memory serves, he actually won the America's Cup more times than he won 12 Hours of Sebring. So I could be wrong on that. And here's Tower Turn, so named presumably because you can see the aircraft control tower at the airport. Onto the brakes, trying not to turn too much because that's how you get Jeremy Clarkson, and just sort of rolling into the S's. Let's see if I can take this corner in third. I'm guessing I can't. Light brakes. Nope, cannot take it in third. Okay, oh, it wants to be subterranean. Again with the... Okay, well, we're going to call it at that point because clearly something... With apologies for that last segment, let's discuss this year's races. The 2023 Super Sebring will feature the 71st running of the 12 Hours of Sebring as its headline race, supported by Friday's 1,000 Miles of Sebring, a 2-hour Michelin Pilot Challenge race, and 2 races of the Porsche Carrera Cup North America. The Carrera Cup is a one-make series featuring Porsche 911 992 Cup cars, typically with a field of approximately 30 cars with 1 driver per car. All cars are identical in technical specifications, and teams are only allowed to modify their setups, suspension, brake bias, etc., which can be changed between each race. This season will feature 16 races, 2 at each of 8 venues, typically tied in as part of an IMSA weekend of races, although this year 2 events are in support of Formula 1 events, and 1 in support of a NASCAR race at Road America, and 1 is part of the Rennsport Reunion 7. The Sebring races are the season opener following an eventful 2022 finale during Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. In the final race of the season, 2 of the 4 racers in competition for the top 3 steps of the championship podium, Kai von Berlo and Trenton Estep, experienced difficulties, leading to 2nd and 4th place finishes in the championship respectively. This year's lineup promises another year of support from several teams, headed up by series stalwarts Kelly Moss Racing, MDK Motorsports, JDX Racing, and Goldcrest Motorsports. The Michelin Pilot Challenge is a wonderful introduction to multi-class racing, featuring GT4 sports cars, classified as GS for the Pilot Challenge, and sedan or hatchback-based touring cars, classified as TCR. Both GT4 and TCR cars are effectively road-going vehicles modified for racing, in contrast to GT3s, which now paradoxically also race in touring car races and are generally built originally as racing cars with far less commonality to their road-going brethren. As such, the racing is comparatively budget-friendly and attracts a broad range of manufacturers in both classes. Many GT4/GS cars have GT3 stablemates in the IMSA paddock and are from marques well known in the racing world, led by the likes of Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, Aston Martin, and BMW, whereas the TCR manufacturers are brands that may initially seem more at home in a grocery store parking lot, with Hyundai Elantras, Honda Civics, and Audi RS3s dominating the grid, alongside a lone but very plucky Alfa Romeo Giulietta. Nevertheless, the TCR cars are quite competent, and their impressive grip, coupled with predominantly front-wheel drive powertrains, allows them to keep up with the GS cars in the corners and low-speed sections of many tracks. Most of the cars remain the same from last year, although there is a new BMW M4 GT4 that supplants the previous year's model with a positively pugnacious replacement. In my wholly unhumble opinion, BMW have gone absolutely berserk with their oversized radiator grills, and while the new GTP car manages to make its styling cues look relatively comely, the new M4 road car elicited a verbal gasp of disgust when I first saw it, and that feeling has not mellowed with familiarity. Anyway, the season opener for Pilot Challenge was the 4-hour BMW M Endurance Challenge during the 24 Hours of Daytona weekend. Though the new BMWs showed promise at the beginning of the race, system maturity began to tell, and the Mustangs and Cayman 718s quickly proved themselves to be the class of the field, with several examples of each vehicle battling for the lead and drawing away from their competition on effectively every restart. The last 30 minutes of the race are excellent, and well worth watching, with both GS and TCR coming down to the wire. The whole race is indeed worth watching, and the only noteworthy letdown was an uncharacteristically subpar performance from Turner Motorsport. In addition to the aforementioned teething issues with the new M4, they had a few pit lane slip-ups that were highly atypical for the team and cost them significantly in terms of penalties. The 1,000 Miles of Sebring is a sufficiently high-profile race to itself warrant a full race weekend, but in respect for the history of the 12-hour race and the value of the track as a testing ground before Le Mans, but not to the point of accepting another rule set convergence as attempted in the early 2000s, the FIA has deigned to accept second billing status behind the 12 hours in order to run the 1,000 Miles of Sebring on Friday afternoon. Most of the race classes mirror the 12 hours, with GT3 cars making up the lower two classes, supporting the two prototype classes, LMP2 and, in its second season, Le Mans Hypercar. Hypercar this year will feature competitors from Toyota, now with more than a decade of contiguous competition in the World Endurance Championship, Privateer Glickenhaus in their second Sebring outing, Peugeot in their second Hypercar season but first Sebring competition since 2011, where for 2 years their diesel V12-powered 908 HDI briefly broke the dominance of Ingolstadt and Jost to grant France her only 2 victories at the track, and Ferrari, returning to the top level of prototype sports car racing after 50 years. 2 LMDH/GTP cars that raced in the 24 Hours of Daytona will also join the WEC field, 1 car from Cadillac and 1 car from Porsche. Despite Ferrari's long absence from the top echelon of racing, their other vehicles have earned their spot as the second most successful manufacturer at the Sebring 12 Hours, with 12 victories across more than 40 years from 1956 to 1998. Only Porsche have won more overall titles at Sebring, and this year Porsche will again return to contest outright victory on Saturday, March 18th, in the 12 Hours of Sebring. Porsche has won Sebring more than any other manufacturer, with their last victory in 2008 coming somewhat unexpectedly. The LMP1 Audi R10 struggled throughout the race, and an LMP2 Porsche RS Spyder run by Penske, now running the current LMDH Porsche, provided Audi's only other defeat during their 14 years of suzerainty over Sebring's bumps. This year, Porsche will compete in the new top class of IMSA racing, LMDH or GTP. A refresh of last year's Daytona Prototype International cars, Porsche joins competitors from the DPI class, Acura and Cadillac, as well as BMW's new M-Hybrid V8. Both Le Mans Hypercar and LMDH vehicles are intended to prevent the prohibitive cost escalations of the late LMP1 era, while still encouraging innovation and the development of road-applicable technologies. The specifics of both the LMH and LMDH regulations will be explored in a later video. In the 12 Hours of Sebring, as with all IMSA Endurance Cup races, those IMSA races of 6 hours or longer, LMDH/GTP will lead the field, with LMP2 and GT3 Pro and AM cars supporting, as in World Endurance Championship, but LMP3 cars, with largely comparable performance to the fastest GT3s, join the field as a 5th class. This is the big one. Once round the clock on arguably the most brutal 3.74 miles of competitive road course in the world. For more than 60 years, the world's top manufacturers have been sending their best here to test their designs to the breaking point and beyond, in heat, humidity, blazing sunlight, and the inky darkness of rural Floridian nights. Although the hay bales and full oil barrels that once served as track markers have been replaced with curbing and marshal's posts, the advance of technology has, if anything, increased the relevance of Sebring as the ultimate test of a vehicle's ability to survive and perform in the harshest motorsport conditions in the sports car world. This year's edition of the Classic Endurance Race sees a new top prototype class, LMDH for Le Mans Daytona H, which we assume stands for hybrid, but there's some unclarity over that, or GTP for Grand Touring Prototype. There's no unclarity on that one. Take on the bumps, pitting experienced IMSA campaigners Acura and Cadillac against clean sheet designs from Porsche and BMW. The new vehicles had their race debut at the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona in January, with 9 entries across the 4 manufacturers. BMW and Porsche both struggled somewhat with new vehicle teething issues, although their per-lap pace was competitive with the other GTPs. All GTPs qualified within 1 second of each other, and about 5.5 seconds ahead of the leading LMP2 piloted by Ben Keating. Acura qualified first and third, with the number 7 Porsche of Porsche Penske Motorsport splitting the 2 vehicles of the defending manufacturer. Their strong qualifying performance prefaced their race results as well, earning Acura a three-peat at the Daytona 24-Hour and the number 60 of Meyershank Racing their second consecutive victory. LMP2 came right down to the wire, with the number 55 Proton Competition Orica besting the number 17 CrowdStrike car by less than 0.02 of a second. LMP3 was largely a walkover in the back half of the race, seeing the number 17 AWA Duquesne cinch its victory with a 12-lap margin of victory over its closest competitor. In what may have been a first for the current GTD Pro rule schema, or GT3, a GTD won overall, as the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin outpaced both its class competitors as well as the entire GTD Pro field, followed, in class, by another Aston Martin Vantage. Overall, though, the WeatherTech Mercedes-AMG GT3 split the pair and claimed GTD Pro class honors. Going into the 12 hours, a series of test sessions at Sebring in mid-February reinforced Acura's strength at the top of the GTP field, with the runner-up from Daytona, the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Acura, topping the timing sheets, although the Daytona-winning number 60 suffered an early accident in the first session, hampering its progress. Porsche and Cadillac rounded out the top three, with BMW struggling for pace, and finding themselves about 2 seconds afield of the rest of the GTP field. Whether BMW will be able to glean enough knowledge from the sessions to make an attempt at overall victory in the 12 hours will only become truly evident in mid-March. In the GT classes, Mercedes continued to show strong performance, although the competition from Lexus, Lamborghini, and Ferrari was not far afield. Only Porsche, unusually, continued to struggle with their new 992 GT3, finding themselves almost 1.3 seconds behind a Falterbach's finest. On the whole, with a fresh crop of top-class prototypes, hundreds of experienced drivers, manufacturer engagement at an all-time high, and old competitors returning with newfound vigor, sports car racing is thriving, with another chapter prepped for the history books at this year's Super Sebring.